Hey everyone, and welcome back to BlenderDiplom.com. This is once again a winter special, and I'm gonna pick you up where Christoph Pöhler has left you. He showed you how you can easily model a snowflake using a series of modifiers, and I'm now gonna use Blender 2.73, the release candidate, to render it. And to get it rendered, I will first give it a material. And then I want to distribute different version of the snowflake all over the scene. And for this, I'm gonna use first of all, a particle system, and second of all, multiple copies of this snowflake. So let me first take these to another layer, but duplicate them. Shift D. Then M, and here on the second layer, and on the second layer, on this other layer, I got them all. I can, for example, move them. And when you take a look at the model, you see that it has the same material as the other one. I can, for example, call it snowflake. It has this tiny 2 around it, so if I change this material here, it will also change the material of the snowflake here. So what I can do now is I can change the model of this snowflake in edit mode and do whatever I like with it. And then, for example, move this back again to the second layer, create a third version, and so on. And in the end, I will have several cool snowflakes. So see you in a minute. Here I've modeled 3 of the snowflakes. You can, of course, model a lot more to make things even cooler and more random and better looking. And I'm gonna select them with Shift and add them to one group, because this is where the particle system will know that this is multiple snowflakes, because they're in one group. To do this, I'm gonna hit Ctrl G, but first I will open up the tool shelf panel here, because down here we'll have a very important option, so Ctrl G. And now here we can give the group a name like snowflakes. Or if you don't want to open up the tool shelf here, you could also hit F6 and also change the name of the group. Now let's go back to this layer here, and we have this one snowflake which I want to use for the shot at the end. That's the big one, the one at the focus, and all around it there should be smaller snowflakes. And to do this, I will hit Shift S, cursor to center, and add a cube that will act like a volume or a box where all the small snowflakes will be in. So add cube, tap in the edit mode, and let me say as 20 or so. I don't think this is enough, but should be enough for the tutorial. And now let me look at it from the side and move it a little down here so the camera is up in the top edge of it. And this way, all of there will be more volume where we can spread the snowflakes. Okay, we are already in Cycles Render. That's important. And now let me go to Particle System, add a new one, and let me see whether I am on the first frame. Yes, I am. That's also somewhat important. And now let me set start and end frame for the emission to 1. Now we got all the particles on the first frame. And as you can see here, they're obviously all on the outside, or exactly on the faces of the cube, which is not cool. I want them in the volume. So let me select volume for emission. And now just let me take a look. I guess this is okay. So also we could turn off the velocity. What I really need to turn off is physics. I don't want them to move. You could use physics if you want to create an animation, but this will be a still image, so no physics. And here under render, let me turn off the emitter so we don't see the cube when rendering. Now I can here select group, and here let me select the snowflakes, and now we have lots of tiny snowflakes. And I think they are a bit small. I want them to be at least half as big as this one here. So let me set the size to 0.5. This means they are half their original size, roughly. And they are all aligned at the moment, which is not cool. So let me change the alignment by turning on rotation and give them a random initial rotation, and you could also move some randomness here if you want. The rest of it doesn't matter. And now another thing I'd like to change is that I want some to be bigger and some to be smaller, and well, maybe I get the size to 0.75, but I put the random size up to 1, or at least 0.9. This means that they are gonna be at there's a 90% randomness in the size, so they can be as small as 0.1 of 0.75, so they can be go as small as 0.075, which might be like this one here. And for last but not least, let me move the camera so it has a better look on the flake in the middle. Shift F I'm gonna use, and this is not so easy to remove now because things are moving kind of slow, but I can fly a little bit with the camera. Or let me just hit G, and after I'm hitting G I can use the middle mouse and then move to the front and to the back, and here in my notebook this is quite slow, but I got there. Now let me look through the viewport shading solid. That's okay actually. For the simple version, let me turn on rendered viewport shading, make the background of the world completely white, and give this star here a little bit of a color, like a bluish color. This is actually looking pretty cool, especially if I turn off the big star in the middle. You see that this, if you render this out, this will be a really cool background for maybe a greeting card. And this is actually exactly what Christoph Perleit developed this technique for, why he needed it. He created a Christmas card with a background like this. And you might wonder why I did use diffuse shading and not select emission, which should render even a little bit faster. Well, it doesn't in this case. So let me turn this on, and up here you see updating lights, computing distribution. Now it starts to render. So what is this? Well, this is due to the multiple importance sample. Multiple importance sample usually reduces noise in your scene, but it comes with a very small price, and that is Cycles is computing the position of every light source in the scene. And for this emission material, each triangle of each of these stars here is a small light source, and thus the position gets computed. And take a look what happens if I turn this off. Instant rendering. So this is one of the rare cases where multiple importance sample should be turned off. In all other cases, turn it on because it will greatly reduce render times, or at least noise. Now I want the second version to be created, and I will be using those stars here once again, the ones with the emission material on them, but I want to use them as a background element for a nice bouquet. So I'm gonna duplicate this group once again. Having the three of them selected, I'm gonna hit Shift D, Y, and move them along, and then I will select just the flakes because I want to remove them from their current group and add them to another one. So the shortcut here is Ctrl-Alt-G, remove from group Snowflakes, and now Ctrl-G, F6, and this group I'm gonna call Bokeh. And I'm also want to give them a different material. They should be bright and shiny, while the other ones should have some kind of glass or ice material. That's why I am gonna click on this small 7 here for this last snowflake. The last one is the one where the spot in the middle is a little brighter than for the other ones. Click on the 7. Now it has its own material. I'm gonna call it bokeh, and I'm gonna change the viewport color so just we see what's gonna happen next. Because next I still have the other two ones selected just like this one, and this one is the active one. Now I can hit Ctrl-L, will make links for the materials, and they all share the bokeh material now, which is pretty cool. And I can now go back to the first layer, and this is where I'm gonna remove, turn off the cube from rendering, turn on back on the star here, or the snowflake, and then I'm gonna hit Shift A, add mesh, UV sphere, tap into edit mode as 25 this time. This means that it's a little bigger than the cube, and I'm gonna give this a particle system, and I'm also turning clear select here for the display maximum draw type wire, so I can see through it. And here particle system, new particle system, but I will copy the settings from this one, but hit on the 2, so now I just have the same settings which I can change, and most of the things are already cool. I just will change the emission to emit from faces. And now let's see how many of these we got here. I guess this is already pretty cool. And I don't think I have to change anything here. So anything I change, all I change is that they are emitting from faces. And now let's see how this is looking when setting the viewport shading to rendered. Okay, not much different than before. But let's see what is changing when I turn the background to black. And select this one here, my big center snowflake, and change this material from a emission to a gloss shader. This is strange. This is odd actually, because the ones in the background, I see. The ones in the background, they also need to be from the different group. There's a group snowflakes, and they should be the group bokeh. And now if I render, we got this one that has this glossy look, and all the other ones are bright and shiny. But this is gonna be even better. Let me select this one again, and I am gonna change the look of the gloss here. Make it still a little bit bluish, but mostly transparent. And then I'm gonna select the camera and add a lot of depth of field. And before I'm adding the depth of field, I want to have a target for my depth of field where everything will be in focus, and out of the more the camera is away from the target, the less things are gonna be in focus. And this is gonna be this empty here. So let me call it empty.focus. Now let me select the camera again, go to the camera settings down there, depth of field, focus, empty.focus. And now when I turn back on viewport shading render and increase the radius of the aperture, some things are gonna get out of focus, but this one here stays. And I guess setting the size up to 0.16 or something like that should be pretty fine. And for the things in the back, I would like to make a subtle change, and I wanted to change the bokeh shape not to be circular anymore, but have a star-like shape, like a 6-sided polygon. And I can do this by setting the blades to 6. But let me first show you what happens when the blades are set to 3. And now you see everything in the out of focus area is actually has the shape of a triangle. And now if I set the blades to 6, we got 6-sided bokeh shapes. And the other shapes are also looking like a little bit starish, so this will actually be pretty cool. So now let me switch over to the material of the background snowflakes, because they will make quite a lot of it for the final image. And this material I'm gonna change in the compositor. Well, let me first turn on the strength a little bit, and then let me add an input particle info. This node allows us to gather particle data, and what I want is something like a unique number for each of these stars or particles here, and this is the index. It starts at 1 and counts for each particle that enters the scene. We got 1000 of them, so the first number will of course be 1 and the last one 1000. And to change the shade of the color here, I'd like to use a converter color ramp. That one is going from 0 to 1, so I need numbers from 0 to 1. So how can I use the index for this? Well, simple. I will just divide the index of each particle by the number of particles, and that one is 1000. So let me change the math node here to divide and add the value here for the factor. And now you see we got darker stars and brighter stars, and you can see the effect even clearer when I change this from green to bright red. And so you see we have green stars, red stars, yellow stars, all shades in between. Perfect. So really, really nice effect for the bouquet. So let me change this from some bluish nice color towards another bluish color that's going more towards green, like here, and maybe even brighter. So this is already pretty cool. And let me up the strength a little bit. And while I'm I'd like to increase the size of this particle source here. So let me go to edit mode, S2. And now when I'm going back to object mode, the particles are far away. And let me also select the camera and increase the radius to 0.2. And this will actually make for a nicer bokeh effect. And now I need to increase the strength of these particles here. Or let me not increase the strength, but let me increase the size down here. Where do we have it? Let's take it to like 1.5 or 1.8. Now we have this really nice bokeh effects that are somewhat starry. And next thing would be to change the material of this main snowflake in the middle here. So let me select it, and here we have glass BSDF. First of all, I want to change the IOR to 1.31. That's the IOR of eyes. Then I'd like to add a little bit of roughness, like 0.05, not much of it. And now you can already see the everything a little better. I guess this is too much roughness, 0.03. Next thing, I'd like to add a little bit of displacement so it looks like really like the snowflake is already starting to melt in the air. So let me add a texture, noise texture, and add the factor to the displacement. And here, once again, we can now see the entire snowflake clearer, and small bumps are also emerging, but they are way too strong. Let me first reduce the detail, and then let me reduce the strength of the bumps by using a converter math. Once again, this time I'm using multiply, and by multiplying with a very small number, I will also increase the effect, decrease the effect. So this is now just 1/10 of the size, the bumps now, than they were before, and this is starting to look pretty close to what I want, and really cool. Maybe let me double the scale to make them half as big. That's a little oddity in Blender, because actually you are changing the scale of the coordinates for the noise, and thus making the scales twice as big will actually make everything smaller. And last but not least, let me add an input texture coordinate and just generate it here just for safety and compatibility reasons. So because this is what we want here, we want generated coordinates for our noise texture, and this way we can be sure that it really is using generated for the texture. So this is looking pretty cool. Let me now go back to the default view and see how this is looking with all the snowflakes turned on again. So here's the cube where we had all the other snowflakes, and now this will take quite a long time to render. This is looking pretty good already, but I'd like to make the snowflake here pop a little more, and also make the other snowflakes that are in the background here show up a little better. And for this I will introduce another light source, and this will also be the last thing I'm gonna do. So let me first deactivate these cubes here and the sphere, so all that's left is this central snowflake here, and I will add a cube as a light source, but I will edit it because I only want two sides. And the reason why I'm using a cube for this is because, very simple, the my PC is quite slow and I want to be very sure that these two planes will be outside of my cube that will creates all the snowflakes. So let me rotate this by 45 degrees. Give it an emission material, like let's say strength 3, and make it just completely white. And now let me hit rendered. And here we see the effect already. Let me say S and 2. And here you also see that I left a little slight bit of blue in the snowflake, and I don't want this. I want this to be more realistic. So let's make this almost perfectly white. So like this. And here you can already see that the edges are getting brighter. And I will select this plane here, or cube, double plane or cube. And I have already scaled it up by 2, so let me scale it up by 20. And now it should be totally outside of the cube. All the snowflakes are in, and now you see that it clearly highlights the edges of the central snowflake here. And because we here see a little bit of this light, let me simply turn off the ray visibility for the camera. Now I can turn on the sphere again here for the other light source and the cube. Also, this will add all of the snowflakes. And now one last thing, and that is I'd like to make the background a little darkish blue, and that's because basically this way all those snowflakes inside the cube, you won't see it here, but you will see it clearly later on, they're at the moment more like whitish, and I want to make them slightly more bluish when they are out of focus. And the last thing here inside the cube, and that is I'd like to change the seed so I have a nicer distribution of the particles, but because I want some of these snowflake particles to be actually seen like here, so, and here. This is pretty cool, and this will surely look pretty good when it is rendered. And by the way, this will need quite a lot of samples to render because it has heavy bokeh and some refractions and everything in it. So yeah, I'd say at least 2,000 of the samples, or even 5,000. And that's also the reason why I didn't create an animation this time, because, you know, usually I create the animations, but this is a still image because it takes long enough to render already.